Hello and welcome everybody to session number 4 in the TimeXtender Data Quality Academy. It's been an amazing 4 weeks. I've personally enjoyed it greatly, and I feel like I've learned along with everyone else, and we've loved having you with us, and we're sure today is no exception. In terms of that, I've mentioned it in a couple of the sessions. It's the first time we've done a training like this, and a big part of that has come from TimeXtender. We've worked with them in the community for a few years now, and it's been really amazing to see how they approach working with data professionals. And they've been really mindful throughout this training course to bring real world practical tips that we can all take into our daily work, and it's landed. So massive shout out to TimeXtender, and in particular the 4 faces that you can see on the screen today. Gaia and Mel delivered some of the early sessions, brought some great knowledge, fantastic passion. We had Adam join us in the middle, and he's seen us through to the end. He's with us again today, and we're joined today by Gunnar. They've purposely saved Gunnar till last, so we're going to go with best till last for Gunnar. If possible, if I could please ask Gunnar and Adam to turn on your cameras and microphones, and welcome back, Adam, and welcome for the first time, Gunnar. How are you both doing?
Doing really well, thank you. Yeah, really pleased to be back. It's good to see you.
Lovely stuff. Welcome to the stage, Gunnar. We're lucky to have you. We're lucky to have you.
No pressure.
No pressure, mate. We've been building the pressure for a couple of weeks, so there's no pressure. There's no pressure. In terms of Gunnar, obviously you've met Adam before. Those that have been with us throughout. Gunnar was involved in founding and building Xmon, which was a platform that was acquired by TimeXtender recently, and he's been described as the go-to man when there's problems that can't be solved by anybody else. We get Gunnar, so we're expecting some good interaction from you guys today. Briefly speaking, in terms of what you can expect, similar to other sessions, we'll start with a bit of a recap. We'll jump into some best practices. There's Miro boards for some interactivity. The chat and the Q&A is open, so please do jump into the chat, say hello, let us know that you're there, drop us an emoji. We love the emoji. And then as we go after coffee breaks, we're going to be getting into some very real world, walking through data quality projects from start to finish. We're going to be digging into some details. So yeah, you're in for a very good session. And what I'll do, I will stop sharing my screen now, and I'll maybe hand over to you, Adam, and make sure we're set up and ready to go. As you're doing that, there we go. That's the first emoji. Who was it? Own up in the chat. Let me know. Christina's been in and said hello as well. Thank you very much, Christina. It really does mean all the world to know that you're there. Stuart, lovely to see you again, Stuart. Afternoon from London. So we have a Londoner with us. Your screen is looking lovely, Adam. So if you're happy, I'll turn off my video and I'll leave you guys to it.
Excellent. Thanks, Dave.
Yes.
And a warm welcome to everyone. Welcome back to session 4. It's great to be back. I wasn't expecting to be back, but to be honest, I've really put a lot of stuff Gunnar's way over the last couple of weeks, and we felt a little bit bad that he was going to be taking this session all on his own. And you're such a great community that I thought, well, why not? Let's go back. Let's help him out. And it's just a great opportunity to come and see you all again. So thank you for having me, I suppose. So we're going to start every meeting that we have. You know this by now. We've done this in the previous sessions. We start by taking a minute. And this is great for a number of reasons. We're super busy in our work, all of us. We often go from back-to-back meetings. We don't get a lot of time to kind of process in between those. And so at TimeXtender, we really value taking the opportunity, just take a minute before each of these meetings, each of these webinars, to allow us to just to land, be present, to focus, and get ready for what's to come. So yeah, I just invite you to just take a minute, and we'll be back in a bit. Thank you all very much. It's funny, sometimes that minute seems like it's really, really long, and sometimes it's like, how can that possibly have been a minute already? But I hope that you found it useful. I encourage you to do it. Just a really great way to land and focus and be present. So we're going to start off today with a recap from session 3 and just talk about some of the things that we covered in the previous session. It's been a couple of weeks since we were here, so this is kind of like a previously on Data Quality Academy. So we answered some of the questions from the Q&A section here on Zoom and also on the Miro board. And we spoke about always wanting, where possible, to make sure that checks and changes are made as close to the source as possible. We discussed considerations for when you might need to change or correct historical legacy data versus starting over with a clean or a hybrid environment. We talked about ways to handle when fields might need to be mandatory retrospectively and how we would use our data quality rules to check fields on a schedule or before an important activity like an invoice run, for example. And we saw how using slowly changing dimensions in our data integration product can help to track name changes over time. And we also gave a summary of considerations for scaling and talked about the importance of starting small, focusing on one business problem at a time and prioritizing those with the highest risk and value. And Gunnar's going to go into more detail about those in today's session. We also mentioned the benefits of a unified metadata framework can bring, such as data lineage, automated code generation based on best practice procedural workflows, and the importance of consistent data definitions across departments and effective enforcement of governance policies while you're scaling using role-based access controls to ensure compliance. And of course, we talked about Excel and some of the pitfalls of using Excel when it comes to data quality. And although it is the application of choice for so many businesses, it does struggle with simple validation controls. It has quite poor data integrity controls, is unreliable in terms of versioning and rollback functionality, some very basic auditing capabilities, and suffers from a lack of in-app security features. And so we considered the different approaches where businesses are either very unstructured, where they use Excel or they're hard coding, not really dealing with their data quality issues, or they're on the other side of things where they're very structured with a fully fledged master data management solution like Prophecy, TIBCO, IBM, for example. And the benefits of the unstructured approach being that it's cheap to create, where they already have the licenses in a lot of cases. It's customizable, but the disadvantages are that it's very hard to maintain, it's hard to govern, and also hard to move ownership to the right people. The benefits of structured were that it's very controllable, that ownership is really clear, but the disadvantages are that it's very expensive, both in terms of licensing and implementation, and also can be very slow to add new things to the process. We also then talked about data enrichment, our data enrichment product, and where we feel that sits in between these two approaches. And then we looked at automation. We talked very briefly about automation, and we're going to cover that a little bit later on in this session, talking about our orchestration tool. But for today's session, what you can look forward to is some best practices of starting in your company and looking at optimizing Microsoft Fabric through automation. So we went through the Miro board and we were looking at all of the different things that you said you wanted to see in this session, and we really tried to shape this agenda around that. And so we're going to be doing a process from end to end using our orchestration platform and how we can optimize Microsoft Fabric operations. We're going to have a walkthrough of a data quality project from start to finish, and a lot of you wanted to see that, and some real life examples. It's really helpful to bring all this theory together and to connect with the material with real world examples. So with that done, I will ask Gunnar. Well, he's already on the stage. Actually, I was talking to him about this community, about how great it is, and said that they're really super active. And what I would really love to do, just as a really great way to introduce him, could we please have just some emoticons that welcome Gunnar to the stage, welcome to session 4, make him feel welcome, because they are so great and it's so lovely to see, because we don't see you, we only see each other. So look at that. Wow. Gunnar, look at the love. That's amazing. So, wow. Thank you all so much. And with that, Gunnar, I will hand over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, lovely to see so many people here. It's really, you've been talking so well about it. So I was looking forward to for the day. I am trying to share this, and hopefully I'm sharing something.
Yep, looks good.
I often say the story that I once presented for 40 minutes before somebody said you're not sharing anything. So I always confirm. But yeah, thank you so much. Oh, no, I'm sharing again. Yeah, so thank you so much for inviting me here, and that's great. Great to see how many people are interested in this. So like Adam said, we reviewed all the Miro comments, all the comments here in the Zoom, and a lot of them related to, how do I start in my company? How do I actually get started? And also, how does a real implementation look like? I mean, theory is one thing, but when you actually have the data and the issues, how can I actually do something about it? Personally, I've been involved with 100 plus implementations over the past 16 years or so. So I'm trying to share from those experiences. Please just ask away, keep this interactive. We might be able to answer some things in real time if Adam is on the comment area, but we also have time in the end, so answers in the Q&A. I found this comment in the Miro board really frame it and this is often what I see. So some department, sales, don't give a flying crap about data. This is improving from top to down, but still a journey. And this is often what we see when we show up in companies, and this is no different than any other data change or any just change you do in a company. When you bring in new tooling or processes, there is always somebody who is going to be against it. And there are, of course, lots of frameworks and processes around to deal with that. And what I have often used, or most often used as a reference to that, is they call this 8-step change model. So basically treat this as a real change management process. And even if you call it a process, it doesn't have to be that heavy. It just means that you frame it correctly when you're starting out. And I often just take part of these, or just the things that I actually need for that particular start in a company. But while in other bigger companies, I might go for a full-blown process here. So, for example, if we go through all of these 8 steps, if we just work from this example here, the first step is always to create some urgency. It's really hard to say, we have data quality issues, we just need to fix those. So we always have to everybody's busy, and you really need to create some kind of urgency to prioritize this for a team. So for example, with a sales department, you could start by measuring the amount at risk because of the bad data. For example, we need to re-invoice 5% of our customers because of bad data, contract data. That costs us about 200 hours a year. And I mean, these are real numbers. I've just seen recently that companies are sending 95% correct invoices out, and they had to credit 5%. So there's a lot of gain here if you just can reduce that by a couple of percentage points. Same, we sold 4% of all sales over our discount policies, costing us, some X amount of euros a year. So if we can quantify the actual damage somehow, that's really helpful creating the urgency. And create some kind of a holistic thing here. We must fix our sales data now to stay competitive, avoid revenue loss, and meet regulatory requirements. So create some kind of a statement of what the goal is here. The next part here is to create some kind of a team around the change. You need to have a champion and some kind of ownership of data here. And we need to bring all of those people that are necessary for at least a small project in the beginning. So you need some data engineers. It's very likely the people on the call here, I would guess. So somebody who has access to the data, understands the data, knows where everything is, knows all the dirty things that are going on here every month end or something. So we need that person. We need some business owner that actually owns the business process and is responsible for that to be successful. It could be a sales manager, it could be a CFO, it could be somebody who's actually accountable for the process itself. And then we need kind of some end user, data steward, end user that's responsible to actually, enter the data. Somebody who creates the product, somebody who is creating the discount policies, or somebody who has access to the source systems, the business systems, and is entering data there. And when need to then define clear roles. I've often seen where you because this can become a bit muddy, that if you're not defining who's responsible for what and what's expected of them, everything takes longer because of just misunderstandings around the way. And also note that in many cases, one person is in more than one role here. So if you are solving something that relies to ITs, then it might be the data engineer and the business owner. Or the business owner is actually the one who is entering the data, in the case of sales manager. And the next step here is to create some kind of a vision here. So, all sales decisions are based on accurate and complete and trusted data. And here we are thinking a bit long term. So now we are working on maybe a short-term project to improve, just to sell it internally, but we want to have some long-term vision of, what are we trying to achieve in long term? Because this project is probably going to cost more than you're actually gaining from it, but you're thinking more long term, how over time you're going to win that. And related to that, set some measurable goals. We want to reduce our credit invoices by 50% by July. We want 99% of our sales within our pricing policies instead of 95. So some kind of achievable goals. And achievable is really a key word here, because it's not feasible, and it's actually not just cost effective to go for 100%. So try to find some goal that you can actually achieve realistically in a set period of time. Then the fourth step in the Kotter's 8-step model is the analyst and volunteer army. In our data quality implementations, often this is just the guiding what do they call it? Guiding coalition. That's actually the team in the beginning. But in a larger organization, you might kind of recruit some data champions from different teams. You might have multiple sales teams, so you pick the sales team who's most willing to experiment with these new processes. You need to find some people who want to try out new things and have time and resources for them, and encourage them to sell their success stories and tips and all of that. And I've even seen incentives. So when if we achieve this, everybody goes out for drinks or something afterwards. Some incentives or rewards or something. Then the fifth step is remove every barriers for success. So this might mean, you need privileges to do stuff. It might, you might not have privilege in the systems. You might not have privilege just in the process itself, or, unclear ownership, lack of training. You might have some obstacles here that you need to remove. And we need to provide solutions for those. This really depends on what you're doing in each case. Could just also be just resources. You don't really have time for it, so management needs to give you time to tackle these issues. And then finally, we go to the fun part. So to generate the easy wins. So what we normally do here is we launch a project to actually have some quick wins. So here we are focusing on sales. So Here we would focus on the sales process. We would identify actions that could be helpful to improve data quality here and to save money or bring in extra revenue. So here you would list 10, 15, 20 ideas that could be helpful for your team in that business process to improve. For example, ensure all contracts have assigned a customer. Pricing must be within 5% of our price list. All kind of simple single sentences that you are listing up every idea you have here. And the rule here is there are no dumb ideas. You just write everything down that is a potential issue, and you will then assess it afterwards. What we do after that is that we assign each idea or action on a risk assessment scale. So this is quite known from auditing, risk auditing, where we are thinking about impact. How bad is a case of a data quality issue? So from everything from none to severe. So a medium, this of course is a really relative scale, but a medium could be 1,000 euros each instance. It could be million euros, depending on the scale of the company you have. While none is, costs you nothing almost, while severe might be just almost a financial ruin for the company, or at least a significant change in the year end. While likelihood is everything from very unlikely, which almost never happen, to happens more often a day. And we have cases where you talk about that this is always happening, but if it doesn't really matter, you don't really need to focus on those. So after you've taken those 10 or 15 or 10, 20 ideas and assess them on this scale, you actually understand where you should focus your effort in the beginning, at least. So our goal is to focus on the area which is most, costing you most effective to fix. And what I've added as a scale often here as well is just ease of implementation, kind of as a third dimension here, because out of these 4, 2 of them might be really impossible to do, especially as some kind of a pilot project in the beginning, while the other 2 might be really easy to implement. So I would start by focusing on those. When you have those, I normally pick out few controls here. It might be maybe 5 controls or so, and the aim is to have this as a short-lived project. So something that could be finished in about 20 hours of work, actual work, over a span of a few weeks. So you might spend half a day for a couple of weeks to get some results, and then you run it in production or in your environment until you see the actual results. Because the magic here is when new data comes into your systems, how these controls help there. When you have run this for these 3, 4, 5 weeks, we can share the before and after results. So we were able to reduce the number of hours in invoicing by 50%, saving 50,000 euros a year. So something measurable, something you can actually sell into your organization as a win. So when you finish those 6 steps, you're gonna set the foundation, and you have something to work with into further processes. Normally, you would iterate in the same process for a few iterations, just to finish that part. But then you could move into more teams. You could go into invoicing. You could go into HR, finance, and all those teams. From my experience, it's best not to eat the whole elephant in one bite. Pick one process, work on that, get significant results, and then move on to the next one. You learn so much from each implementation and each iteration, that at least in the beginning. So you want to learn that quickly. What I've seen really good is, have a central list of these improvement areas that you're working on. Maybe you have a ticketing system, Jira or ServiceNow or something. Often this is just a huge Excel file where you are gathering all of those ideas. You are showing statuses of everything, the owner, the goals and everything in a single place here. This is really helpful. And in my experience, a single team is working on 2 or 3 controls at a time. So even if you wrote down 20, if you try to do 20, you achieve 1. If you try to do 3, you achieve 3. That's my experience here. Rather do shorter sprints and smaller things or fewer things at a time. When going into new teams, you have some experience now. You might have done 3, 4 iterations. So you come into a new team that might only have heard about you from staff meetings where you're cheering about your successes. So what we often have here are some kind of a workshops where we introduce, these 8 hours we've talked, we kind of try to frame that into a 20-minute slide deck. What is data quality, why you're doing it, what are successes, what does it mean for you, all those areas. And then choose a business or a data process to improve for that specific team. So if you're moving into, it could be you're moving into HR, then you would be trying to improve onboarding process of new employees, for example. So you pick that process, you try to measure how bad data is damaging that process or what is happening there. Then you do the same stuff we did in step 6, where you just gather ideas and choose some 5 controls and kind of iterate. So you're kind of doing the same as step 6 here, just in a new team. So generally, I would try and here's an example of the Excel file we've used often. Generally, you do this for a few teams before you start kind of instituting the change. So when you have multiple teams with actual successes, you have some wind in your sails, then you start kind of instituting it by kind of creating real training material, create data governance policies and all that stuff. So we often start this from the bottom up and try afterwards, when you actually have some successes, to do the policies and data stewards and all that stuff. So this is kind of the 8 steps, and if I'm shameless and talk about TimeXtender for a minute. So what we have done kind of in our sales processes actually is that we allow new companies to run the first 6 steps without any license commitments in their environments. So you can, in your organization or your team, you can start, get real successes within your company before you actually have any licensing talks or anything like that with us. So you can actually try it out, see how it works in your environment. Any comments here, Adam?
No, I love that. I especially like the way that you score them afterwards as well. Once you've got the likelihood and the impact, and then the ones that are easy, just in the bottom of that Excel there. Yeah, the actual scoring. I wonder if you could just talk about that just very briefly, because I found that really interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So that's been really helpful. I remember a case when we went to a logistic company to help them with pricing, and we had a workshop of a lot of actually just high level people in the meeting. We spent 3 hours. They came up with 70 ideas.
70. Oh wow.
And so of course especially as a consultant, you have no idea what matters. But as an internal person, you might know a bit more. But at least, so what we did with them, we done often afterwards, is that we gave everyone a 10 cards, just 1 to 10, and we read every idea out loud, and they just, without seeing what everybody else was doing, said impact is 5, and somebody else said 6, and we just wrote down, the average. We did the same with likelihood. And after the meeting, because generally people don't know how hard things are in computers, I spoke with a data engineer and we reviewed how easy they would be to implement. And that took maybe 20 minutes or so. So we did not spend a lot of time on it, but we spent some time on it. So that's everything from easy, as in couldn't be easier, to 10, couldn't be harder. And from there, we did a really scientific calculation of multiplying these three numbers together, which gave us a data quality score, and then just sorted descending by that score. So you, as a data engineer, or we even as consultants, was really good for us. We kind of got 70 approved ideas from the customer to implement. And what happens there is that you start working on these for a month or so, and this list becomes kind of a live document. So when you start implementing 10, everybody get a new idea, you throw some out, you add more, and so this became the task list that is still ongoing now, a few years later.
That's great, because it fulfills so many of the criteria, right? It raises awareness because you've got everyone aware on the same page of what the actual problems are, and you haven't got any bias about who thinks this is more important. It's like by taking those average scores, you're then able to have a more measurable, more holistic view almost of where the actual problems are, rather than where some people might perceive them to be versus others. And then the scoring, I think, is a really simple but very effective way of showing, look, these are the low hanging fruit, and these are what's really important. These are going to be the where the challenge points are. Just to have everything in one simplified view like that, I think is really valuable, and is something that everyone who is beginning their own data quality kind of journey, as it were, could then use this as a way to score them. So yeah, thank you for that. That's awesome.
Exactly. Thank you for that. Yeah.
And we're actually going to segue from here, aren't we, into a little activity. You want to go to that now?
Yes. So next on my slides is
which
everybody's favorite, a break.
Everyone's favorite, coffee. So we weren't planning on doing a Miro board activity, but it was so well received in the other sessions. I actually have it here, don't worry. There we go.
I'm going to comment it. So what we're going to do before everybody clicks the link, open the Miro board. We have session 1, 2, 3, and now we have session 4 here on the right side. So we're going to start with this exercise here. So what I want you to do is to pick one, post it here, and write something that would help you in your team, or you can create some imaginary situation or something realistic. Just be mindful that everybody can see what you wrote. And so let's write some ideas. So I'm going to say exchange rate can be older than 7 days old. It might mean I'm selling on incorrect pricing. So I'll write one idea down, and then I will add that in somewhere into the risk assessment here. So if you do that for maybe 1 or 3 controls, that would be really interesting to see where you go with it.
Yeah. So we'll leave you to do that for a few minutes. If we take like 10 minutes or so for a coffee break, and just to get some activity on the Miro board, so that you can have a think about that, and that's quite on the spot thinking. Get some ideas, drop them down there, and then we'll have a quick look at those, quick review when we come back.
So are we talking about 45 or 50?
What minutes?
Oh, it's 12:36. It's 12:36. I didn't want to calculate here.
Yeah, should we come back at 45?
45.
Yeah, that sounds good. Excellent. All right, see you in a bit. I always find it quite striking how captivating a Miro board is, just to watch, just to see the activity of people buzzing around, adding things in real time. It's just such a great collaborative tool. Yeah, I really like it. I could lose a lot of time to doing this, I think. So let's have a look. What have we got here? Let's just call a couple of these out. So we've got, yeah, missing validation on dates resulting load errors in ETL. What's that one? Data inputted in the system should have accurate data validation with error message to be more user-friendly for a non-technical team. Yeah, for sure. Clearly defined roles and responsibilities. That's interesting. So that's straddling the between likely and very likely, which is quite interesting. So my question to you then is, what happens when you have something that's in between two categories? How do you categorize it, or how do you score it in that case?
It's not really scientific. It's just a judgment call. I remembered one while we were on a break. I remembered one case here which I wrote down here, and well, I'm obviously sharing still. So I was working for a alcohol distributor in Iceland as a data consultant, and they had a case where a customer of theirs, a restaurant, called them and said, "Oh, we are missing the legal alcohol tax on our invoice," and which is kind of a legal requirement, of course. Mm-hmm. So they went through their invoices, the reseller, distributor, and they saw that for the past week, no tax had been invoiced. So somebody in F&O made some mistake that, according to the vendor, is not possible, and they actually spent dozens of hours trying to recreate the error internally, but they couldn't. So everything was, multiplied by 0 somewhere. So this has happened once in the 110-year history of that specific company, but the impact was really severe. So it was around about 5% of the bottom line for the year, just this bit one issue. So I would probably put it here as very unlikely, but very severe. And in that case, we actually created 2 data quality controls. One of which was every time this specific field that cannot be 0 is 0. Mm-hmm. And so basically looking for the source itself. And then we also looked at the end result. So we looked at every invoice that went out. Is there alcohol on it? And if it is, does it have the tax? So you have both suspenders and the belt, if that's the saying.
Belts and braces, love it. Yeah. Yeah. I see that there's quite one of the post-it notes here that's getting some love. Yeah, that one there, educating users about the importance of capturing correct data. That seems to be a very popular one, and interesting where that's being scored as well, in terms of the severity and the likelihood as well. Mm-hmm. So definitely it would seem, just looking at this from a kind of snapshot, that a lot of those issues are within the same kind of area that you were focusing on in your slides, those kind of areas where they are severe and they're also very likely, and really just throwing focus on where it needs to be, and where perhaps those low-hanging fruit are to begin with.
Yeah. And I also noticed that some of them, of course, are really specific. Okay, mm-hmm. I just pointed to my own. Sorry, gonna be less self-referential. Okay, this is really clearly defined. Well, mm-hmm. This, of course, is really open. I mean, this could be. Yeah. You're gonna have to. You have to kind of detail this to a specific issue. Yeah. So this might create 10 of those tickets instead.
Very good. Well, I hope that's been helpful for people to get to grips with, and just think about how some of their own data quality controls would benefit their organization using this matrix. We would encourage you to use it. So yeah, thank you for that, Gunnar. I will just ask you to stop your share. There you go. And I will start mine, and we can continue. So as I mentioned at the start, we went back through the Miro board from the previous sessions and the Q&A, and we really wanted to try and fit everything into this session that we hadn't already covered. And there was some requests there to look at automation, or look at orchestration, like an end-to-end process. So we were thinking about how we could do that. And one of the ways that what we come up with is using orchestration to talk about Microsoft Fabric, which some of you may already be on your Fabric journey, as they say, or maybe considering it. And I just thought we'd spend a few minutes just talking about how TimeXtender are doing that. So our orchestration product, as Mel and Geir covered in the first episode, that's not right, is it? It's TV show speak again. The first session, we cover this holistic data suite, of which the orchestration product is one of them. And orchestration really empowers organizations to automate every step of their data journey, no matter where the data lives or which technologies are being used. And if you consider for a moment the type of automation that you have in your companies and how you manage those activities, whether you're running legacy scripts on Windows via Task Scheduler, orchestrating cloud native processes like Azure Data Factory pipelines or Databricks jobs, or maybe triggering ClickSense analytics, TimeXtender's orchestration product brings all of these disparate processes together into a single cohesive workflow and then synchronizes tools that wouldn't normally work together. So, for example, your on-premises scripts and your cloud native jobs can run in parallel and then only progress to the next step when all of the dependencies have been met. And the great thing about orchestration is that all of these processes are visualized in what we call a process map. And there's one of them on the screen just now. And that's a web view, like a control tower, really, where you can see the entirety of your data pipeline and any processes within it from a single unified view. So from here, you can coordinate specific processes and even allow business users access to view and interact safely with those processes without necessarily involving back office teams. But there's more. If you'll notice at the bottom of the screen there, we have Azure and Fabric capacity controls. So we can directly control not just the pipeline activities, but also interact with the underlying infrastructure. So in this case, we're not only looking at the quality of our data, but also the processes around them and making sure that they run as efficiently as possible and drive down costs, all using a hands-off automated approach. And you might ask why that's important when it comes to Fabric, and I would just love to share with you this Reddit story, which is entitled "Tried to roll out Microsoft Fabric, ended up rolling straight into a 20K a month wall." And the summary of this, I won't ask you to read the whole thing, but they basically had a poorly designed ChatGPT inspired pipeline that had a long running unmonitored pipeline job left running overnight. They didn't have any version control. They have been locked out of their tenant because they've used up all of their capacity. They are paying $8,000 a month and they need to go to the $20,000 a month tier just to get access to their system because they're locked out. So there's no deployments, no pipeline runs, no changes. And this is a production environment. And so they're paying thousands for a frozen environment that they can't actually access. And there's a paragraph in here that just really sums it up. I'll just highlight it here. It says the dream was Spark Magic, ChatGPT powered pipelines and effortless deployment. The reality of burned out capacity, missed deadlines, and a very expensive cloud paperweight. And you've really got a feel for these people. And it's very difficult sometimes if you're presented with the Fabric dashboard, you've really got to know exactly the tools that you intend to use in order to get the best use out of them. And so what we wanted to show you was how we would handle that kind of scenario, but using TimeXtender's platform. So we'd use the orchestration product to create a pipeline job, like a process job. Mine is called MS Fabric Pipeline. And the steps of it will be to resume the paused Microsoft Fabric capacity because we don't want it running when it's not needed. We'll increase it from an F2 SKU to an F8. And then we'll bring the data into our data lake. We'll update our silver lakehouse, which we call the prepare layer, and then finally update our deliver instance in the gold layer. Then when all of our jobs are done, we'll then reduce the fabric capacity back down again, and then we'll pause it so that we're not consuming more resources than we need to. And so just to show you how this works, if we go and look at my fabric capacity, we can see that it's currently paused and it's on an F2 skew. And we're going to go into TimeXtender orchestration, click on run, and here we can see all of my tasks. There's the one that I created, the run fabric pipeline, and we can also see all the sub-processes. If we wanted to run those individually, we can, but for the purpose of this, I'm just going to let this whole pipeline run. So we'll click start. And the first thing that we'll see is my fabric capacity start to resume again, and all of the subsequent processes that are waiting in the wings will start to animate. So we go back to the capacity, it's now active, and if I give the page a refresh, we'll now see that the skew's gone from an F2 to an F8. So now our ingest task can now begin, now that we've scaled up. And I'm going to get 2 data sources. There we go, just confirming that the F8 has been scaled up correctly. And now I've got 2 data sources that are now starting their ingest. So we're bringing data from our data sources into the Fabric OneLake. That's the first data source done. And the next one is an API that we're just waiting for. So I'll open up my Fabric monitor and I'll show you, just give that a refresh. There we go. So this is the job that's in process at the moment. This is the notebook that we've created, the TimeXtender has created. And let me just open this for you and I'll declutter this so you can actually see it. And so all of this code, this is PySpark code that's been generated automatically through TimeXtender's low-code drag and drop interface. So all of the really clever code that goes behind that is all shown here. And that's creating PySpark notebooks within Fabric and adding those rows into the OneLake. And I'll just show you the Lakehouse Explorer here and just look at the table that's been ingested. And we can see very quickly at the bottom here, here is my exchange rate information with all of my different currency symbols. So that's now done. So that's green on my map. Now my prepare job, which is the Silver Lake House, that can now continue. There it is, that's finished. And then finally updating the gold layer, which is the deliver instance. Now all of those jobs have completed. That's our pipeline run done. We're now going to signal at the bottom of the screen for the capacity to reduce back down from an F8 to an F2 skew. And then when that's done, we're going to pause the capacity again to make sure that we are not consuming resources and costs when we don't need to access them. And we'll just go back here, give this a refresh, and we should now be able to see my capacity is paused and it's back down to the F2 again. So that's a really simple end-to-end process, but there's a lot of cool automation, a lot of coding that goes behind that. It's a great way to visualize all of those processes in that pipeline, while also giving us control over the jobs that we're running to make sure that we only consume the resources we need, which in turn helps to keep costs low. So yeah, I hope that was helpful. And Gunnar's now going to take us through another data quality demo. So Gunnar, I will hand over to you.
Thank you. I saw actually in the QA a really interesting question. Hi Gunnar, thanks for sharing your invaluable experience here. My questions are, what was the initial idea behind TimeXtender? What was your very first MVP, and how was your first business meetings with potential buyers? Any interesting insight? So we were founded in 2009 as a data consulting company, and I was basically the only cost center of the company, being the lone developer, supposed to fix everything that the consultants found repeatable. And so what we were dealing with is that we as consulting company for other companies were delivering data, and the end users didn't trust the data we gave them. So we were basically reporting on data, and they always, of course, blamed us since we were kind of the engineers creating the black box, moving from source system to reports. And in the end, in most cases, the issue was that the source data was incorrect. So we started kind of creating software around improving the data flow from source to destination. So the kind of orchestrator and finding every case where we were delivering something that was not consistent with the source data. So it was mostly to improve our own job. And of course, data engineers and our customer side started to use it themselves. And then at some point, some of our customers just started using our products on actual business data. So it was not that what we were doing was incorrect. It was just employees were entering wrong data in source systems. So they just started to use the product. So there was just pure user demand to start adding features which were more business oriented. Thankfully, I was not allowed to present. I was your first business meetings. I was a geeky guy in a Star Wars t-shirt developing software. Well, we had some better people selling it. Thankfully, they had a lot of experience, a lot of gray hair at the time, and they were trusted. So I guess yeah, I don't really have much insight from it personally there. I hope that helped a bit. So the actual guy who started the company is the same age as I am now. So I guess I'm now the experienced gray-haired guy. If we're gonna share,
You can still wear the Star Wars t-shirt though. That's fine.
it's too small at the moment. But okay, there are people on the call, right? Okay. And so a lot of the questions we had was also, how does it actually look like? How does the product look like? How does an implementation look like? So I took some screenshot to gather. In the beginning, I'm going to show you the simplest implementation you could ever find. So nothing really hard. And that's mostly just to show you the process from start to finish. And then after that, I'm going to show you a bit more involved implementation. And just in this simple example, this is a demo. We have just a demo Business Central database. We have customers, and we have somebody who's having issues with completeness and validity, causing failures in invoicing process. So basically what I'm saying here is that every time we see a foreign customer, we should have a currency code, or there's going to be a failure when we're invoicing that specific customer. And the issue normally is to move ownership to the correct people, just so the person who's onboarding that specific customer knows what's expected of them and knows about their issue, because this is probably not a required field, and so there's often issues there. So the first step is always the boring part, the documentation part. What is expected? What are we expected to do here? So I would always start to write down with the kind of the other party, what are you trying to do? So name, foreign customers missing currency code. Description, all customers which are not marked as domestic need a valid currency code so we can invoice them correctly. And here, more is better, because you might be creating a control that, okay, it might trigger every day. So it's top of mind what we're doing here. In some cases, you're finding stuff that might only pop up every year. So, write more than less here. And here we tie it to the goal we had earlier, reduce credit invoices and some action for the actual end user. Open the customer card in Business Central and set a valid currency code. You're writing this for somebody else than yourself, so be as clear as you can here. It's really important to write source data, because you often have the same types of data in multiple places, and you need to be real clear of what data set you are supposed to be looking at. So we have spent hours trying to dig through wrong databases while it was readily available in a different place.
That was going to be my question, how many hours have you lost to that piece not being accurate?
Well, it was billable hours, so it's fine. No, but here it's really important to be clear about this, and the end user might not even know. You really have to ask probing questions here. Owner, who is actually responsible for things that crop up here. It's going to be the salesperson as defined in the customer card, so the person who actually created the customer, or the sales manager if that's empty. So that's the documentation part. So this could be easier. We have a database. We're going to use TimeXtender Data Quality to create a data set. Data set is basically some list from the source data, and then we can create multiple rules on top of that data set. So a single implementation might have 100 data sets that each have 2 or 3 rules connected to them. And those rules, all those data sets will execute, running those rules as well, and sending out notifications to the actual responsible people that owns the issues. And I have to admit that I have done enough live demos to learn that that's not smart, so I recorded it. So I'm gonna just show you how it's done. So here I'm in data quality. I'm gonna create a new data set, and customers in Business Central connected to my data source. Here I've already created the data provider itself. I'm just gonna paste in the cell statement. Most often it's really simple. You're just creating the whole list of customers. It might be all active customers or whatever, but it's gonna be really simple in most cases. And here I'm describing the data set. And finally, I'm gonna add it to a schedule. And in the end, I'm just telling the system what is the actual unique key for customer. So no dot is going to be the unique identifier for that specific customer. So now I've saved and published. So that's all it is when you're creating a new data set. Just connect it to a data source, write out the details, and you're kind of finished with it. So now we can start creating some rules. And this is the same video again. So we're going to create some rules. I'm going to click the rule section and create. And international customers missing currency code. Select the data set itself, and then I can set the exception criteria. So this is basically a filter on so we're going to find out everything that's broken here. So every time we see a customer posting group not domestic, and so we can see the currency codes here and where the currency code is blank. So we see that these 3 are currently breaking this rule. After that, we kind of write down our documentation here. It's everything that was in the previous slide. So the description for the end user. And here you can actually be really helpful for end users and actually link to, well, either more material, or you could even link to the customer cards directly. So it's really helpful that they receive a notification, this customer is incorrect, please click here, and then they open up the correct place in the source system. That's of course almost only available in web applications, but often is. So here I'm gonna set the owner, and that's gonna be the sales manager in this case, while we're gonna map each exception to a specific owner of a customer. So that's gonna fulfill the responsibility rule of gonna go to the correct people if it's defined, but the sales manager if nothing is defined. Finally, I'm gonna create a notification. Here I'm creating an email notification, but we could also create, for example, tickets in ServiceNow or Jira, Asana, or something. And as a final step, I'm just previewing it, and I can see that we have created kind of these 2 notifications. So close. So the process after this is going to be that a salesperson will onboard the new customer. They will go into Business Central and add the details there. Data quality rules are going to be executed probably within the day. Sometimes it's just weekly, just depending on how the business process is. Every time we see a broken entry, we send out notifications about what, why, and how to fix the error. So that specific person receives it within the day. So that person, of course, is best able to fix the error because it's top of mind for them. So they will receive a notification on how to, what's wrong, what rule it broke, and how they could fix it. And it's important to understand that, this results in, they are quickly fixed, but it's also a good documentation on the, what's expected of the people. So it's a kind of a unit test for a business process. So every time they break a rule, they get notified about what effects that have, and next time they onboard a new customer, they're more likely to do it correctly. So now I'm going to go into a more difficult example. And I found it best just to show something internal, something that we at TimeXtender AS, Incorporated, we're dealing with internally. We use Azure for all of our IT infrastructure, almost all of our IT infrastructure, both for just development, software development itself. We use it for all our production, so everything we are hosting for our customers. And we use it a lot, for example, for these demos. So we have a lot of just virtual machines, databases, all kinds of Fabric instances for demos that should be paused when we are not demoing, but we salespeople we are not really mindful of that often. Almost everybody in the company is allowed to create a resource in Azure, but it's really important that we do it correctly. So we're going to have a loose allowance. We are allowed to do most everything, but we need to control if people are doing it correctly. Currently, we have about 12,000 resources in Azure, and all, of course, with our associated monthly cost. So what we were working on was kind of, are we running resources that we don't need anymore? And are resources that are running, are they correctly defined? So some of the control ideas we had at the beginning was related to ownership. For example, are all resources assigned to a current employee? So we have some tagging abilities within Azure. Is every resource there tagged correctly to an owner? And is that owner still working for TimeXtender? That's, for example, one ownership control idea. Is that employee allowed to own this type of resource? So you could be running a resource that you as in that role are not supposed to be running. And do we need the resource? That's maybe harder to answer, but there we have a human hand coming in. And from a configuration perspective, are resources configured correctly? So that's sizes of databases, virtual machines, depending on in what purpose it is. Are the demo resources, do they have auto shutdown? Are they kind of scaled down when not needed? All that stuff. So they're minimized when not using, but properly sized when they are in use. And our resources costing us more than usually. So you might have a resource that normally costs us, 500 euros a month, but at some point it grows to 1,000. So somebody should be notified about that. In the example before, we could connect directly to the data source. We could just do a simple control that can be just run direct to the data source itself. So no transformation or staging or anything required. But in the case of Azure, we need historical data. We need to enrich the data because we don't have everything in Azure. We need to bring in internal data, both automatic but also manual, regarding who owns resource groups and subscriptions. we need to have an employee list, we need to have some configuration details there that we have to have somewhere else. So we need to enrich the data. So as a configuration example on how we did it is that we have Azure and we set up data enrichment. And I think even though we are talking a lot about our tooling here, it's just important this is some kind of enrichment place. It could be a staging area in a database, but we at least need to land the data somewhere. So we fetch data, both billing data and some resource details here to data enrichment. We have people around the company assign responsibility to resource groups, to subscriptions, to maintain the employee list, everything that's gonna need manual intervention. What we do also here is to do automatic enrichment, calculate usage over time and all kinds of enrichment that we can do automatically here. And from there, we can connect data quality. So instead of doing data quality directly against Azure, we're actually doing it against data enrichment in this case. So we create multiple data sets and multiple rules on top of those data sets, and they will send us notifications when we're doing something incorrectly. I see that Peter is asking here, how are the data quality rules executed? Do you use process orchestration to trigger the execution? In the simple example earlier, here we are not, here we're just executing, triggering things within the data quality part. So the orchestrator is not triggering it here. When we are in the more complex example, then we need to do it in the orchestrator. But that's mostly because now we have rules that depend on other stuff to have happened already. Hope that answered it. So we need updated data before we run the rules, unless we're just running rules against the same data set again and again and again. So as a kind of a technical thing here, so we access the data via the Azure APIs. So here we are fetching data in the orchestrator, in this case, into data enrichment. So this is just a short PowerShell script here to fetch data, basically loops through subscriptions, fetches all the resources into a data set, and then in the destination part, I push it into our staging area. Here I'm using the TimeXtender orchestrator. Any tool that can connect to the API and push that to a database or a CSV or whatever could be used as well. I'm just using our tools here because it's the tool I know best and I find the best for this. But this is how it looks like. So we're just staging it here. Same with billing data. There we actually have some Parquet file that are exported every night into a storage container in Azure. I just exposed it via SQL endpoint, and then I was able to write a simple SQL query to fetch the past 3 days in this case. So since I'm fetching all the data the past 3 days and I'm pushing that into a staging area. The staging area, of course, being data enrichment in this case. So here is how it would look like as a raw staging area, just all the resources in a list, like 11,600 here. Then I would do some automatic enrichment here. For example, here I am writing a simple SQL statement to fetch everything from the JSON tags. So who is the owner, when was it created, what's the description, all that stuff here. So this is handwritten to kind of take out that specific data. So this is really flexible and allows you to do kind of whatever you want to do here. Also, we take the data from there and we create few more kind of staging tables. We create a list of subscriptions and we extract from the billing data who is the most likely owner of that subscription. Basically, owns most of the most expensive resources in that subscription, and how did it cost the last month and all that stuff. So we're gonna create a list of subscriptions here. But this field here, the owner, which you can hardly see, is also human overridable. So I could go in here and say it's not actually Anya, it's gonna be Adam here. Also, I import the list of employees of TimeXtender here, basically to compare against the actual data from the source. In this case, I'm just fetching it from the data warehouse. So this is just a list that is populated automatically behind the scenes. But here I get a list of every employee, and I can compare that against the third-party system, the Azure.
I think
I
that's
also
what,
add some,
sorry, just to interject, just as a thought I had, that's what makes it really powerful though, because you are automatically getting like that employee data refreshed. So you don't have to do like a one-time export of, something into an Excel spreadsheet and then you're relying on that to use those mappings. You're regularly getting data, not just from Azure, but also from our own kind of HR or data warehouse systems that are always going to be kept up to date. So as often as the data gets refreshed, the data that it relies on for the lookups is also getting refreshed as well, which is often a challenge that someone has to go in and rerun multiple exports like every month of the employee directory if they've got a high rate of churn for employees and stuff. So yeah, it's one less step that people have to do.
Exactly. And honestly, in the beginning, it was not automatic. It was just exported and imported just to get the job done. And when I kind of finished the project, then I automated this part. It's always kind of do it in the correct order. And in the beginning, you're just proving that what you're doing is kind of valuable.
That was always my stance on documentation. I was always horrible at doing documentation. I always wanted to build the thing first and then said, okay, I promise to go back and do the documentation afterwards, and didn't very often do that next bit. So
Thankfully, TimeXtender creates documentation for you. But
it does, yeah, I'm saved.
the next step here, I'm adding more enrichment columns. For example, when we stop seeing a resource, then it has been deleted. So I don't delete it from here. I just mark it as deleted. So over time, I will see when resources are created and when they are deleted as well. And I calculate how expensive they are and all that stuff here. So I'm basically creating stuff so calculations become more efficient later on. So now that I've done these steps, I mean, this is kind of few steps: fetching data from two sources, enrich it a bit, adding these tables. Then I'm ready to do what I did in the simple demo. So I create a few data sets. So here I'm just fetching all resources. The only thing I add, which is not just select star from table, is that I'm creating a link to that specific resource in Azure. I hope you can see it, but it's kind of, the link is on an easy format. It's just portal.azure.com, blah, 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 and then the ID of the resource. So for end users, they actually receive a link directly. So if I create a resource that's too expensive for my allowance, I will get a link that says, please click here and fix it in Azure. So I'm directly linking to the correct place. So simple stuff. Some, of course, are a little bit more involved, but generally they are not really that complex here. And from that, I can create the multiple rules I defined earlier. So invoice section name is CSS, basically means demos, and the cost is more than we allow. So it's expensive stuff that me and Adam create. Same here. Here we are not configuring a virtual machine correctly, so we don't have an auto shutdown time, for example, and we are not below the fold here, not in the correct definition as well. So the controls themselves become easy when you have done the prep work correctly. And finally, to come to Peter's questions earlier, so now we have data quality controls that rely on data being refreshed. So we have two things that depend on each other. So in the orchestrator, we add them to a process map, as Adam showed earlier, that kind of executes everything in correct order, but also visualizes the process. So for me, as a person monitoring this, I can just go into this URL. I can see that this is green, meaning that actually executed correctly. These are red because they are controls which are reporting errors because they found exceptions. So I can see that the process is working correctly. I think even if I go here, so I can go in here and see that this was executed this morning and has been running quite steadily here. I can click run here and refresh everything as well. I went into the live demo, Adam.
Yeah. On the fly. I love it. It's great.
It will refresh at some point. But so in this case, we orchestrate things in the orchestrator because we have multiple technologies here kind of working together, and they need to know about each other. Results. I mean, that's why we're doing things. Here I'm claiming all the responsibility, but there were other efforts as well. But at least for the sakes of the slides, it was all us. But this took about 1 day of technical setup, from idea to the first 4 controls. And just in a span of like 3 months or 4 months, we got 25% reduction in cost. That is, you know, in terms of salaries, this is few employees. So we are safe for another month, Adam.
Yeah. It
So
was actually really, really interesting to see the results of this when this is part of an internal effort to, you know, control, you know, those Azure costs, and it's amazing to see the effect of such simple corrections, whether, like as Gunnar was saying, whether it's just you've got virtual machines that are just left running endlessly, or SQL DBs that are left running, but they're actual demos. They don't need to be on 24/7. And just by going in, identifying who owns them, and making the corrective actions, making sure that they're within the kind of policy of what they should be configured as, but also, as Gunnar was saying, about people who had resources running who are no longer with the company, you know, and so those kind of checks, they just would have been left there indefinitely. So it's incredible to see how much impact a few controls and checks and corrections can have on stuff like on stuff like this, like 25% over the course of, I think it's what, 3 or 4 months we've been doing this, right?
yeah, I think we started in January. Oh, we started measuring in January. I think we started the project in February. Perfect. I have a question from Diego. Can TimeXtender use a different cloud provider other than Azure? Both the short and long answer is going to be yes. We host our solutions on Azure, but we can both control from a data quality perspective, but also TimeXtender integration tool can work with other providers. Whatever, if they are Snowflake or Fabric or Click, no, Fabric is of course Azure, but Click, or I think you know it better than I do, Adam. We can connect to most of them at least.
Absolutely, yeah. So that could be, for example, AWS. So all of these kind of cloud hyperscalers offer various API integrations or, you know, CLI tools, and it would just be a case of using the orchestrator to package those up, putting them into a process, and then firing them. So much in the same way that Gunnar has targeted the Azure APIs. I think that AWS do it slightly differently. I think that they use S3 as the repository for all of their billing data. So they would have a recurring task that would put data into an S3 bucket on a schedule, and then we would use the orchestrator to then go into that bucket, retrieve that, and then land it and enrich it, for example. So yeah, it can be, but wider use than Azure for sure.
Perfect. So we're going to have one 10-minute break now, after which I'm going to show what I call experiences from my from a bank of experience. I'm going to share some stories I had, and then we're going to go to QA in the end. But in the beginning, we're going to first, go with a short Miro exercise. What we wanted to think about, is, what would you want to take from this academy, these sessions? And what I wanted you to think about is, what are you going to do after the session to improve something in your team, your company, your personal life, whatever makes sense in data quality wise. So if you would maybe spend a minute or so trying to write down what are you going to do next week.
Yeah, we did have the original title for this was what were you going to do next Thursday or next Friday? Because you're not going to be coming to the Data Quality Academy, sadly. So what will you be doing with the time that you've got? So yeah, have a little think about that. Go have a comfort break or grab another coffee or hydrate, and we'll come back to you in about 10 minutes. Thanks. I'm going to miss these Miro boards next week. Might just create one, just play around with it next week.
Family board.
Yeah. Yeah. So what have we got here? So let's go through a couple of these. Implement data quality, data enrichment, and process orchestration at a few customers. Amazing. Try to convince our team to use/sell the TimeXtender. Well, that's amazing. Thank you. We appreciate that. Look at the recap of materials of these. Brilliant. Yes, and we will be sending that out. Create a data quality dashboard. That'll be really good. Follow a data quality process through training and feedback. Or another dashboard. Engage with stakeholders. Yeah, that's absolutely key. And regular data audits to identify inconsistencies. Brilliant. Yeah, really great ideas, great first steps or follow-up steps for those of you who are already beginning that kind of journey. I hate saying journey, it's so overused. It makes me sound like a Love Island contestant or something. Okay, that's great. Thank you for everyone for your participation in that. Now we've got some real life, Gunnar's real life examples to
I just, when I was thinking about that, what would be interesting, because everything in slides is so easy. But what happened when you come to real life, and you don't really have, well, it's not that easy as in the textbooks. So I just picked a few ideas, a few stories, all nameless, since I didn't get approval from the specific companies, but they are all real examples of things we have been working on. So first one, no access to the actual source data itself. So in many cases, you have data quality issues, but you are all on the receiving end of it, and you don't really have any access to the actual cause of it. You don't have access to the specific source system, or it might even be a third-party data set that you're bringing in. And as always, try to do the controls as close to the source as possible, but it's not always possible to get really close to it. So I wanted to share at least one tactic that I've used in those cases. This was going to have animation. So, for example, I was once working with a telco that had service registration errors. So they were registering new phone numbers, services around that, internet and mobile and landline, and they had a lot of registration errors, but the only access we had were just log files from billing errors from that system. So when they were processing the actual usage, we got errors if they were incorrectly defined. So basically a list like this, this phone number got this error code at this time. And, these were thousands and thousands and thousands of entries per day. So, what does it mean when a phone number doesn't have a billing error for a week? Is it actually fixed, or is it a phone? Is it the landline for a vacation home that nobody calls for 3 months? So you don't really know if the issue has been fixed or not. So just an interesting solution there. What we did with them is that we created basically an aggregation on the error list, down to maybe down to this week, last week, the week before, this month, last month. I think in total it was like 16 columns, but just to fit it on the slide, I put it to a fewer. So we summarized it by periods. Then the service agents, they got a list. We kind of created a priority. We created we got a measurement on these, how to prioritize these issues. So if they saw a 0 here, it went into a low for the service agent. But if it spiked up next week, then it got raised in the priority here. So of course they also had so many errors on so many service agreements that they couldn't fix everything. So it's more of a create a top 10 list, a top 100 list they could work on today. And since we keep track of each exception being number A plus error code in this case, then the service agent actually goes into the source systems, because they had access to it, and they verified that it had been fixed and then closed the issue. So there you saw how it actually went down here. So that's one of the complex issues that we've been working on, and one idea could be helpful for you. We had a comment regarding accuracy. Accuracy is definitely the most difficult data quality dimension to verify. So it's the completeness. Basically, is it filled out or not? Validity is is it on the right format? So it's an ID, an actual ID, it's a phone number, an actual phone number, but we have it actually correct. That's that's something that normally just requires a human hand to help with. For example, this was a comment in the Mirrorbot. No, I think it was in the chat here actually. So what about data that we cannot easily check? Like if we type item 4004 instead of 4040, both exist, both are valid for the order. That is always a judgment call, but I wanted to show you at least 2 examples that we have used to tackle these issues. Human approval, so 4 eyes, and kind of finding some indicators of this being a mistake. Many controls you create, you are pretty sure that the results of them are exceptions. You just know that this is incorrect. But in these cases, it's an indicator of an error. So you're more kind of creating some kind of a filter that kind of is helpful. And then a human goes in and says yes or no. So as an example, we had a wholesaler as a customer, which allowed their customers to order online. So they had an online form ordering all kinds of stuff, from alcohol to soda to stockings and hair care products, and it's a huge wholesaler here. They had a lot of really frequent returns because of ordering mistakes. And some of the quality controls we created was, for example, same product was ordered multiple times in the same week. That's basically the customer itself is by mistake. It might just have refreshed the web page actually and posted the form again. But there are all kinds of issues that can cause this. But in many cases, just they made a mistake. You forgot at that third entry, didn't see the thing was still in the cart, and all kinds of issues that can crop up. And this happened enough that they created a control around it. Very short time between 2 orders. And people just click the submit button twice or whatever. Customer type not ordering products which were uncommon for that type of customer. For example, a restaurant is buying a hair care product. So if we can find some indicator that product 4004 is not supposed to be ordered instead of 4040, then you have to kind of use that info. But realistically, it's really hard to be sure there. Regarding the human approval, I thought I created a slide about it. Often you have multiple people allowed to do something in a product. It could be creating a discount policy, creating administrators in SAP, or it could be, changing vendor bank accounts. So, something fraud related. So in that case, every time we see that change, we send out to the whole team, this was created. And we have, for example, in the pharma industry, we have controls that just sent out somebody created this product in SAP, and these are all the attributes they created. So basically, everybody on the team gets notified. They read it through and just say, okay, just so everybody is on board there, so nobody makes a mistake. Because in that case, making a mistake could be really costly. We're almost out of time here. Too many exceptions. How to prioritize. This is supposed to represent a mountain of exception. This is ChatGPT. I remember one of our first clients, coming back to what the question earlier, they fully embraced the product. And in like 3 weeks, they had 1.2 million exceptions in our system. And after I fixed just the low performance, they were like, okay, what do I do with this? It's too much to work with. So you have to prioritize and all that. But we need to help end users to prioritize their work. I mean, if they're going to fix 100 exceptions, I mean, where should they start? They don't really see progress or anything. So what we have used to help companies tackle this is both amount at risk and then data quality risk score. Amount at risk has definitely been talked about before. I'm not sure about this part here. Regarding amount at risk, there we, for each exception, calculate how much it costs your organization. So it could be euros. That's of course best if you can quantify it into a monetary amount. Could be hours, could be frogs, whatever. Just need something to count. And of course you can transform hours into euros if you just calculate how much an hour costs the company. Then you have for each exception how much that part actually costs the company. So every time we have I think I have it here. So if you have a retail company, we should have 15% margin on all sales. If you sell a product that has a cost price of 100 for 110, we are losing 5 euros per sale. So here the cost per exception is 5 euros. So this is how you can actually assign amount at risk to each exception, and users know then where to prioritize. And then you could, even in your control, have a filter that we don't care about issues that have a lower cost than some X. So you just don't even show them to the end user. The other tactic is maybe in more complex situations where you have multiple controls for a specific data set. For example, here I have a real case. We had a financial institution assessing risk of every customer. So they had about 100,000 customers, and they created 80 data quality controls, where each control was just marked as low, medium, or high in importance. Some don't really matter, while others were really important. We executed every control on every customer every day. And from there, instead of notifying people about each exception there, we basically pushed that into an area, repository, and calculated a risk percentage for each customer. For example, this customer here is breaking 15 out of the 37 high risk controls. So they have a risk of 75%. While this one here is not breaking any high, but is breaking one low. So they get a low percentage. So here we are kind of just helping end users to prioritize how to work with these exceptions. I hope it makes sense.
Yeah, that's to me.
I had to put in this meme.
Love
Unclear,
it.
conflicting business rules. And this is more, of course, a human thing than a technical thing. I've so often gotten into organizations where they say, this has to be this, and this has to be that, and they are conflicting. And I once got I think it was a 13-page Word document of rules for salespeople. And when I tried to implement those, they did not make sense at all. And the people were following these rules. For example, customers should never have more than 50% discount. Customers switching from other providers should receive 25% first month discount. And there are a lot of these kind of conflicting things that you kind of have to clear. And this is why it's really important just to work with the business to actually define and own the rules. So the data quality rules are not supposed to be owned by the data engineers, but by the business process owners. These were just some random thoughts. I hope to fill the hour.
Yeah, you did it. Look, we've got 5 minutes left. That's awesome. Thank you. And actually, if with these 5 minutes, if we could ask Dave to join us back on stage, I suppose all that really just remains for us to do is just to thank you all for joining us on this journey for the last 4 sessions. And we hope that you have enjoyed it and that you've got some benefit from it, and that you can take that forward in your own kind of journeys in your own situations. So yeah, thank you for being with us. And we've got a couple of questions. Dave, do you want to jump in with anything before we head to?
I'm going to jump in just by saying, I think I'm speaking for everyone, but how much I enjoyed it. I've been seeing all the emojis coming through. Like you, I'm a bit hooked on the emojis. I also love the chat. We've had a thank you in the chat. I'll call out Rosemary, Fafina, Yavas, all been in there. And the other thing I enjoyed was the international nature of our audience. I always loved at the very beginning, but I'm joining from, the Netherlands, from London, we're, all over. So it really makes it feel like a community, even though we're all spread out all over the place. So I personally have absolutely loved that. You're right, there are a couple of questions. In terms of that, we will quickly shoot through them, but I'm also very keen to talk about the offer that you guys have put for everyone that joined. And quickly, just to explain this one, how people access it, I'll maybe come back to you, Adam. It's pretty straightforward, but if you could just explain, how do people get some free access to TimeXtender?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we'd love for you all to have a try of this. So we're very happy to extend a free trial for you. And rather than us just go and create instances of the platform for all of you, we think the best way, if you can do this, is to head over to TimeXtender.com. There's a blue book a demo button over there. Tell us a little bit about you, what you're interested in, and that way we can assign the right resource to you to get in touch and make sure that that you hit the ground running. Now, all of the instances, for example, can come with demo data, or you can use your own data. And we'll just have a quick, non-salesy call with you just to gather some requirements and make sure that you get the best use out of the time that you've got.
It's a little bit more free education, isn't it? Like, why not get someone else to help you? Insider tip as well. I found out ahead of the call, the standard is 2 weeks. I think, chatting with the guys, we've built that relationship between the Data Science Festival and TimeXtender, and I think you guys are perhaps open to even extending that to 4 weeks. If people are mid trial and they're happy, they can almost get back in touch with the team, and they'll get an extra couple of weeks. So that's, again, a little insider tip for anyone that's in the call. The top question from Vimal was keen to be able to review the materials. All of the sessions have been recorded. Everything can be watched back. The micro site that we've built will be up for the next couple of months. You've got to log in. You can join at any time and review all of the content. And then the question there from Ellie, what is your recommendation to best convince the management to adopt TimeXtender as against internal technical resources? So I think that is a very good question that maybe, who would like to take that out of you two?
So I think, yes, I think this goes into the urgency thing in the beginning, and to really explain, have data, to show how expensive it is. The trials and pilots we've been doing are really cost efficient. They might cost, if you go through a consultant, they may cost around 20 hours of work from their side. If you're going to do it internally, they are, of course, they cost your time, but they can be really cost efficient way to get started. You don't really need to, and we have in many cases done pilots with customers which haven't convinced their management to do it already. It's more to prove the case internally. So it can be really a non-committal thing. If you don't feel comfortable selling it yourself internally, have reach out to partners or me and Adam, and we can help you.
Yeah. I love that. You've got to get a bit of data, haven't you, and show what can be done. And I think sometimes with the internal solutions, yeah, you build it, you own it, but what happens if the team splits up, people leave, there's technical debt, you've got to stay on top of it, all this type of stuff. So there probably is cases where that makes sense, but equally there's a lot of cases in other other organizations where you just plug in a solution, which is perfect, man. In terms of that, the final bit from me, gosh, bang on 3 o'clock. This is someone said that in the chat. This has been so professional. It really has. It really has. So the final bit for me, there is certificates. I don't know if Adam, you perhaps have a little look what that looks like. So certificates are available for everybody that attended 3/4 of the session. In terms of how that works, we have all the details, who's joined, when they've joined, all that sort of stuff. So the team and I'm not going to be doing it. The team, who am I kidding? The team are going to go through and check it all out, and we'll be following up over email to make sure everyone gets their certificates. So that leaves me to bring things to a close. Man, thank you. I called it out at the start. This is the first time we've done it. Thank you for being open to trying a pilot. I think it really does showcase the attitude of TimeXtender. Behind the scenes, I've seen you shaping each session based on feedback. There has been a lot of work that has gone into that. So I feel very lucky and very humbled to have been part of it. And massive thank you to all 4 of you from TimeXtender that did it. It's been a real pleasure meeting you all, learning more about the company. I'm going to hand back to both of you for last words. So I'll maybe come to you first, Gunnar, come to you, Adam, just for the last word. So how did you find it yourself, Gunnar? Have you had a good afternoon?
Oh, it was so great. Lovely to see. It was a bit intimidating seeing so many people here, but you're so lovely all. So I had a great time. The 2 hours went like in 15 minutes. So
dude, mate, I nipped down and had a coffee and I checked the time. I was like, what has just happened? And what about yourself, Adam? I feel like you nipped off, had a holiday in the middle, you've come back,
I did.
You've jumped into an extra session. I feel like you've had a good time as well, eh?
I couldn't stay away, clearly, yeah. And it was my first webinar, actually. The very first one that I did with you was my first one that I've ever done, and I really enjoyed it. And I don't honestly think I would have enjoyed it as much if it wasn't for such a great community, and yourself, and the rest of the team behind the scenes there that helps to make this all that it is. So yeah, we've enjoyed it. It's been a lot of effort, but we get so much back from the community, and it's just really great to see that active engagement. So we just hope that they found it useful.
Everyone's going to be signing up. That form is going to be getting peppered. And I said that was going to be the last word, but I've seen there's so many comments in the chat. So I'll quickly fire through them. And thank you for doing it. Rosemary, thank you so much. Fafina, I learned so much. Smiley face. Eloise, fantastic insights. Christina, thank you for a very professional session. Farnaz, great session. Thank you so much. Peter, I think I've seen Peter's joined from holiday. He's been on all 4 sessions. So that is the dedication we love. Ting-An, thank you so much. Ellie, thank you guys. You are amazing. I second that. The comments continue. Such great sessions. Thank you for all the great sessions. Diego, thank you guys. Thank you all. So amazing. And that leaves me to thank everyone that's joined. A big part of it has been the interaction. It has been the community that we've built here. So thank you all for being with us. I'm hoping we may be able to do something again in the future. So keep an eye on the newsletter and we'll keep you posted with everything that TimeXtender are doing. But thank you all and we'll see you soon.
Thanks everyone. Bye-bye. Take care. Bye.